Every single day you are bombarded with the exact same piece of advice. Invest in yourself. It is the highest yielding asset. It is the only investment nobody can steal from you. So you buy the books, you register for the masterclasses, you download the productivity apps, and for a moment as you click the purchase button, a rush of dopamine floods your brain. You feel smarter, you feel richer, you feel like you are finally taking control of your destiny. But let me ask you a brutal question. Look at your bank account right now, look at your daily habits. Has your reality actually changed? Or have you just paid a premium price to buy the emotion of progress? Welcome to the shadow side of the personal development industry, a multi-billion-dollar machine engineered not to set you free, but to turn your deep-seated insecurities into recurring subscription revenue. Today, we dismantle the grand illusion of self-investment and uncover why your obsession with self-improvement is the exact reason you are staying broke. 1. The commercialization of growth and the weaponization of FOMO. The modern self-improvement industry does not sell education. It sells temporary relief from existential anxiety. To understand how you became a victim of this system, we must first look at the psychological mechanics of the market. In a highly competitive global economy, individuals face a chronic underlying terror of obsolescence. This is not merely a financial fear, it is a deep psychological vulnerability rooted in what evolutionary psychologists call social status preservation. The market has masterfully weaponized this vulnerability through a phenomenon known as FOMO, or the fear of missing out. Financial gurus and educational institutions do not attract you by showcasing the grueling, unsexy reality of hard work. Instead, they manufacture a gap between who you are and an idealized, hyper-successful version of who you could be. They show you private jets, pristine minimalist offices, and promises of financial liberation attainable in just 30 days. In psychology, this relies heavily on the concept of social comparison theory, originally formulated by Leon Festinger. Humans naturally determine their own social and personal worth based on how they stack up against others. When you see an influencer preaching about self-investment while displaying immense wealth, your brain perceives a massive status deficit. The industry then presents their expensive course or seminar as the magic bridge to close that deficit. They create the disease and then they sell you the cure. Consider the historical precedent of the early 20th century industrial boom. When mass production flooded the markets with goods, companies realized that selling based on utility had a ceiling. People only needed so many bars of soap or pairs of shoes. The breakthrough came when marketers began selling identity instead of utility. They shifted the narrative from what the product does to how the product makes you feel about yourself. The personal growth industry has adopted this exact playbook. You are no longer buying information. Information is free and abundant. You are buying an identity voucher. When you purchase a $3,000 masterclass on algorithmic trading or high-ticket sales, you are not purchasing a guaranteed return on investment. You are purchasing the right to tell yourself that you are the kind of ambitious person who takes action. The transaction itself becomes the psychological climax, leaving the actual difficult labor of implementation completely decoupled from the purchase. The long-term consequence of this cycle is devastating, because the underlying anxiety of not being good enough is never truly resolved by a financial transaction. The relief is short-lived. Once the initial excitement of buying the course wears off, reality sets in. You still have the same job, the same income, and now a smaller savings account. Instead of recognizing that the method was flawed, the consumer blames themselves for not learning enough. This drives them right back into the market, buying the next book, the next mentorship, and the next certification. You become a perpetual student, trapped in an expensive loop of consumerism disguised as enlightenment, while the only people achieving financial freedom are the ones selling you the map. 2. The trap of psychological consumption and fake progress. To understand why your brain so easily falls into this trap, we must dissect a profound neurological glitch. It is a concept we define as psychological consumption. This occurs when the human mind completely mistakes the acquisition of knowledge for the execution of that knowledge. When you sit down and read a book about corporate strategy, or watch a complex documentary about macroeconomics, your brain undergoes a measurable chemical shift. It releases dopamine, the neurotransmitter responsible for reward, motivation, and pleasure. Your brain cannot easily distinguish between the mental simulation of a victory and an actual victory in the physical world. Therefore, when you understand a complex concept inside a classroom or an online video, your brain gives you the psychological reward as if you have actually accomplished the task. This is the birth of fake progress. This phenomenon is deeply tied to a cognitive bias known as the endorsement effect mixed with action bias. We feel compelled to do something when we're stressed about our finances or career. Buying a course is a visible, tangible action. It satisfies our internal urge to react to danger. However, it is a low-resistance action. It requires no risk of failure, no real-world rejection, and no physical strain. A famous scientific demonstration of this cognitive misdirection can be seen in the psychological studies surrounding behavioral intention and identity signaling, notably researched by Peter Gollwitzer. In his experiments on symbolic self-completion, Gollwitzer found that when individuals announced their intentions to achieve a goal publicly or acquired symbols associated with that goal, their brains treated the goal as partially realized. Consequently, these individuals exhibited significantly less actual effort and persistence toward achieving the goal than those who kept their intentions quiet and possessed no symbolic shortcuts. In the realm of personal development, the course certificate, the stack of unread books on your nightstand, And the motivational quotes saved on your phone are those exact symbols of self-completion. They allow you to masquerade as a successful individual to your own subconscious. You feel like you are moving forward, but you are merely running on a cognitive treadmill. Let us look at a stark reality. Imagine a person who wants to build a successful e-commerce business. Instead of sourcing a product, building a basic website, and cold calling potential suppliers, which involves a massive risk of rejection and failure, they decide to invest in themselves first. They spend $5,000 on an elite masterclass. They spend 3 months taking immaculate notes, highlighting PDFs, and color-coding their notions of business frameworks. They feel incredibly productive. They are working 10 hours a day staring at a screen. But what have they actually done? They have consumed content. They have not tested a market, they have not validated a product, and they have not made a single sale. They have transformed a high-risk entrepreneurial endeavor into a safe, comfortable consumption hobby. The long-term system failure of this behavioral pattern is the erosion of actual capability. When you normalize receiving dopamine from the passive consumption of ideas, real-world execution begins to feel intolerably painful. Real-world execution is messy. It involves software glitches, angry customers, financial losses, and long periods of zero external validation. Compared to the polished, hyper-stimulating world of educational content, reality feels boring and punishing. Over time, your capacity to endure the friction of real work completely atrophies. You become an intellectual elite in your own mind, yet economically stagnant in the real world. You have accumulated a massive library of theories, but you possess zero market equity to show for it. 3. The danger of skill accumulation, without a core asset and baseline skill inflation. The third illusion your financial guru sold you is the myth of the universal toolkit. You are told that every new skill you acquire adds a zero to your net worth. Learn coding, learn copywriting, learn video editing, learn data analytics. The modern narrative presents skill accumulation as a linear progression toward wealth. But in the shadow of economic reality, this unstructured hoarder mentality leads to a terminal condition: structural mediocrity. In the global marketplace, labor is priced based on scarcity and leverage. When you scatter your limited cognitive energy across 5 different disciplines, you fall victim to the law of diminishing marginal returns. You spend just enough time to cross the beginner threshold, but you never enter the top 10% of any single field where exponential financial rewards actually reside. You become a collection of unfinished foundations, unable to support the weight of a premium income. This trap is driven by a psychological mechanism known as the Zeigarnik effect crossed with choice overload. When you are exposed to endless options of potential skills to learn, your focus fractures. The anxiety of choosing the wrong path paralyzes you, forcing you to learn a little bit of everything to keep your options open. But an option that is never exercised is functionally worthless. To understand the systemic failure of this approach, we must look at the historical transition of the labor market during the Industrial Revolution. In an agrarian economy, a generalist survived because they needed to fix a tractor, herd cattle, and harvest crops. But as factories matured, the assembly line proved that extreme hyper-specialization generated maximum economic output. The worker who only calibrated the machine's primary gear produced 10 times more value than the worker who tried to manage the entire shop floor alone. Today, we live in a digital assembly line. The market does not reward a videographer who can write mediocre ad copy and build basic spreadsheets. The market rewards the master craftsman who can solve a highly specific, high-friction problem for a business that already possesses capital. Think of it like building a skyscraper. If you spend your capital buying 10 different plots of land and digging a shallow 2-foot trench on each one, you do not own 10 buildings. You own 10 holes in the ground. You have no shelter, no real estate equity, and you are completely bankrupt. True self-investment requires you to anchor yourself to a single core asset, a primary vector of value creation, and build it deep into the bedrock of the market before you ever attempt to diversify your portfolio. The long-term consequence of this unencored skill accumulation is the ultimate devaluation of your time. Because you are only moderately skilled at many things, you are easily replaceable by specialized freelancers, automation, or artificial intelligence. You find yourself working 80 hours a week, juggling disparate tasks, yet unable to command premium pricing. You have invested heavily in tools, but you never built a single monument that the world is willing to pay for. 4. The delusion of content overload versus market validation. The fourth lie embedded in the self-improvement paradigm is that preparation must precede action. You are told that before you launch your venture, before you pitch your services, or before you ask for that promotion, you must achieve a state of intellectual perfection. You must read one more case study, analyze one more market report, or secure one more industry certification. This is a psychological defense mechanism disguised as professionalism. It is the total weaponization of perfectionism to avoid the pain of market judgment. In psychology, this behavioral pattern is classified as a form of experiential avoidance. The human ego is intensely fragile. It will go to extraordinary lengths to protect itself from the threat of rejection or failure. As long as you are in the learning phase, you cannot fail. If your business fails while you are studying it, it means you simply didn't know enough yet. It doesn't mean your ideas were bad or that your execution was sloppy. Therefore, you use content consumption as a shield to insulate your ego from the cold, indifferent feedback of the real world. A classic study that mirrors this cognitive trap is the famous pottery experiment conducted by Jerry Uelsmann at the University of Florida, later popularized in behavioral literature. Uelsmann divided his photography students into 2 groups, the quantity group and the quality group. The quantity group would be graded solely on the amount of work they produced. The more photos they took, the higher their grade. The quality group, however, was required to produce only one single perfect photo to receive an A. The result was a total paradox of effort. At the end of the term, the finest, most artistic, and technically superior photos came entirely from the quantity group. While they were busy taking hundreds of pictures, experimenting with light, and learning from their immediate physical mistakes, the quality group sat in a classroom theorizing about perfection, creating nothing but elegant academic concepts, and ultimately producing mediocre work. The personal growth industry encourages you to be the quality group. They keep you locked in the classroom of your mind, analyzing theories that have already been outdated by the speed of the market. The marketplace is a chaotic, nonlinear ecosystem. It does not care about your elegant business plans or your neatly highlighted textbooks. The market only responds to raw utility. When you refuse to validate your ideas early through real friction, you build elaborate systems based on pure assumption. You spend 6 months building a highly complex digital product based on everything a textbook told you, only to launch it and realize that your target audience doesn't even have the problem you are trying to solve. You invested $5,000 of your capital and hundreds of hours of your life to answer a question that nobody was asking. The systemic failure of delayed validation is the permanent loss of velocity. While you are busy studying the mechanics of swimming from dry land, your competitor has already jumped into the water, nearly drowned 3 times, figured out how to float, and swam across the river. True growth does not happen in isolation. It is a collaborative dance with chaos, and the longer you wait to join that dance, the more terrified you become of the music. 5. The monetization of self-deception and the transition to execution. The final and most dangerous element of the self-investment trap is what we call the monetization of self-deception. The modern self-help complex has figured out how to financialize your guilt. When you feel stuck in your career, lonely, or financially insecure, the primitive part of your brain demands an immediate solution to alleviate that emotional pain. The market knows this, and it provides an expensive transactional escape hatch. By paying a guru for a premium program, you are essentially buying a psychological indulgence. You are paying a fee to silence the inner voice that tells you that you are wasting your life. The act of spending money feels like sacrifice, and your brain rationalizes sacrifice as progress. This is driven by the sunk cost fallacy combined with cognitive dissonance reduction. Your mind argues, if I just spent thousands of dollars on this mentorship, I must be completely serious about changing my life. To see the historical architecture of this deception, we can look back at the late Middle Ages and the sale of indulgences by the established religious institutions. Back then, if a person committed a moral transgression or feared the afterlife, they did not have to undergo the painful internal transformation of true repentance. Instead, they could simply buy a piece of paper signed by an authority figure that promised to wipe away their guilt. The transaction commodified salvation. It allowed the buyer to keep their toxic lifestyle while purchasing the comfort of a clean conscience. The modern personal development industry is the digital reincarnation of this system. The course completion badge is the new indulgence paper. It certifies that you paid the tax, but it cannot verify if you actually changed your nature. True growth only begins when you completely cut off the supply of fake progress. You must cross the boundary from consumer to creator. This shift requires you to adopt the concept of just-in-time learning. In manufacturing, this is a lean production strategy where raw materials are only ordered and received as they are needed in the production process, eliminating the massive costs of storing unused inventory. In the realm of mind optimization, this means you stop buying courses for skills you might need in a vague, distant future. You only acquire information to solve a problem that is staring you in the face right now, this very hour, on an active project. When you force yourself to build before you feel ready, a profound structural shift occurs. You stop looking for a perfect theory and begin looking for immediate feedback. If you want to learn digital marketing, you do not buy a certification. You spend $20 running a real ad for a local business or a basic product you created. When that money disappears and yields 0 sales, the pain of that real loss forces you to analyze your mistakes with a level of intensity that no masterclass could ever replicate. You become a predator of practical data, not a collector of passive theories. You stop relying on the artificial dopamine of the classroom and begin thriving on the cold, hard metrics of the open market. The map is not the territory. A $1,000 blueprint of a mansion will never keep you warm in the middle of a winter storm. Only a house built with your own hands, brick by painful brick, can do that. It is time to stop paying financial gurus to tell you how beautiful the destination is while they live off your ticket sales. Your execution is your only true asset. Look at the projects you have put on hold because you felt you lacked enough knowledge. Your assignment today is simple. Close the tabs, cancel the subscriptions, open a blank document or an empty workstation, and build one ugly, imperfect thing before the sun goes down. Let the market hit you. Let the feedback sting. That friction is where your true competence is forged. If this breakdown has shattered your illusions and forced you to look at your growth strategy objectively, leave a comment below with the exact asset you are going to launch this week. No more preparation, no more excuses, just execution.